Our story starts in England, not in the year of our Lord 867 or 1066, but in 929. England has been partitioned between three rival states of varying cultures and religions. To the north are the Asatru Norsemen of the Danelaw. To the south, the Anglo-Saxon Catholic rump state continues to hold on under the reigns of King Peter, the troubled son of the great King Alfred. Lying between them is the Pictish pagan kingdom of Britannia, established years before by Queen Boudica at the expense of Alfred's thriving Saxon state. After suffering numerous defeats on the battlefield that diminished his father's holdings even further, King Peter was coming unglued. Already a profligate and reclusive man, Peter was yet unable to escape the chronic stress that plagued him throughout his life. Would he be able to turn the tables, reclaim his father's lost lands, and claim the title of King of a United England? In order to survive, Peter would need strong Christian allies from across Europe. The first test of his army's mettle since the catastrophic losses to the Britannians was in Neustria, coming to the aid of the embattled duke there. With his eyes trained on West Francia, Peter was able to secure an alliance with the Karling king of West Francia through a betrothal between Carloman's youngest son and Peter's daughter. This alliance would strengthen the kingdom and ward off a Britannian invasion should it be able to hold strong. With the Frankish rebellion quelled, Peter was free to turn his attention back to the home island. However, having taken advantage of the Saxon army's preoccupation abroad, two of Peter's children had been taken hostage by Swedish Viking raiders. The continued stress of the unending conflicts and familial troubles continued to plague Peter. The troubled king sought a new form of relief, taking up drink in addition to his already existing unhealthy habits. The royal princess was released by the Swedes at a significant cost to the crown's treasury, although the kingdom still lacked the funds to ransom back the heir to the throne, Alfred. Continuing his trend of being a somewhat detached family member, Peter looked to his 2-year-old second son Osred to be a valuable bargaining chip in securing another Christian alliance. Betrothing Osred to a princess of the Gaelic kingdom of Alba in the north gave Peter a bit more comfort and confidence that any invasion from the Danelaw or Britannia would be beaten back. A Britannia invasion would not be a threat for a long while, however, as the Asatru king who was installed after the death of Boudica's lineage was fighting a large-scale civil war against the pagan lords of the country. Seeing an opportunity for revenge on the Britannians, Peter summoned the English bannermen and marched north, seeking to reclaim the rich lands surrounding the River Thames. During the course of the English invasion, the Swedish Vikings and jailers of Prince Alfred managed to establish themselves in Wales by securing the fealty of the local lords there. Having another strong heathen nation on Peter's borders only further complicated an already tense situation. Should the Swedes choose to capitalize on the island's internal struggles, it would take the combined might of England and all of her allies to beat them back. The Albans, though pledging their troops to Peter's cause, remained absent from the battlefield, instead being tied up in some squabbling between lords in Aquitaine. That was no matter, however, for the armies of England managed to secure a victory by establishing de facto control over the region, without the need for any major battles. In accordance with the crown's laws, Peter then demanded the conversion of the pagan petty lords that had ruled over Essex under Queen Boudica. However, the king's weak hold over the territories north of the Thames gave the lords the confidence to hold fast and defy the king's orders. In response, Peter issued a decree that no heathen vassals would be granted the privilege of serving on his council while he lives, no matter if they have sworn fealty or not. The stubborn king refused to bargain with his new vassals, declaring that if they wished to damn their souls, there was little he could do but wait for them to descend to the eternal inferno. Only the area surrounding the Castle of London, now under Peter's direct control, could be assimilated back to Anglo-Saxon Christian ways. Peter also welcomed 2 new children to the world during this time, though like the others, he would not pay them much attention during their youth, instead focusing on the threats to England's influence. These threats included a new heirless Pictish pagan queen, Boudica III. Peter was finally able to secure his son's release from the Swedish dungeons, once again draining the English treasury and building upon Peter's hatred of all heathens. Now 10 years of age, Alfred had become a wrathful child during his time as a captive. Now back under Peter's influence and care, he could be shaped into a ruler that would hold the same hatreds as his father. Peter's first order of business was to find his newly released son a future spouse that would strengthen the realm. He had decided upon the Princess Katharina of East Francia, deepening his familial connections with the Carlings of mainland Europe. Upon the death of the heirless Queen Boudica III of Britannia, a new royal house emerged. Hailing from the Duchy of Mercia, the head of the House of Warwick had been elected the new King of the Britannians, dividing the holdings with the King of Sweden. What this development would mean for the future of the Middle Kingdom was yet uncertain. Peter was eager to seize any opportunity to capitalize on the disarray, but he would have to be careful. This new king was nothing like his weak predecessors. As King Peter aged, however, continuing his courtly duties was pushing his stress-ridden, fragile mind to its breaking point. He was unable to keep his grasp on reality, often having fits of crazed speech or descending into ramblings on the subject of his father and the northern heathens. He would have his revenge, he would say, though nobody truly understood what he was after, or what was going on inside his head. One of his first actions after having been deemed to possess an unsound mind by his courtiers was to disinherit his youngest son. Doing so, although thought unethical by the court and the king's advisors, would serve to stabilize the realm upon Peter's death. The old king cared little for most of his children anyhow. Upon the birth of his next child, yet another son, rather than announcing the child's birth to the nobles, Peter appeared before his subject declaring that the baby they were all expecting to see was beholden to nothing upon his death, and would never hold any of the lands he worked so hard to reclaim. The nobles, not completely surprised by this outburst by their crazed liege, thus rode back to their castles and cities without having seen the newly born prince. The first of King Peter's blunders was to set his sights on the lands across the sea held by the Carling Lord of West Francia, once Peter's greatest ally. Deciding to press the claim of a courtier he barely knew, Peter plunged the nation into war against the Carlings of East and West in an attempt to seize Neustria for the Saxons. Along with his Gaelic allies, the English bannermen routed the Frankian armies in Cherbourg, sending them fleeing to the east. The armies of the Anglo-Saxons seemed invincible on the battlefield, though Peter's attention being turned to the south left his country vulnerable to raids from the newly elected King of Britannia. Peter's youngest son was captured while the capital was sacked, eventually being released as a 1-year-old worshipper of pagan gods. Barely considering the child a member of his family, Peter gave his son's conversion almost no mind. With the home counties burned by the Britannians, Peter soon began to give way to a creeping sense of melancholy, only worsened by the army's defeat by a regrouped force of Franks. The army was completely routed and destroyed, not having time to embark to sail home. With raiders continuing to burn the countryside, Peter's hand was forced by his advisors, who demanded the crazed king surrender to the Franks. The English treasury was drained, and the army was left in its worst state in decades. Months after, and with a somewhat recovered army and newly acquired funds from His Holiness the Pope, Peter set his sights on a newly independent Norse Wiltshire. After routing their army, an uppity vassal had the gall to blackmail Peter with the threat of sharing the secret that he did in fact order the death of one of the old Pictish kings of Britannia. Caring little for his own reputation and taking pride in his accomplishment, Peter refused to cave to the blackmail and made it known to the world that he was the murderer of the heathen king. Perhaps out of a desire for revenge for their fallen lord, or maybe out of simple greed, the King of Britannia rallied his troops to seize Wiltshire from the English. Deciding instead to retreat out of the area and spare as much of the still recovering army as possible, Peter swore his vengeance on the Britannians. His crazed mind, plagued with flashbacks of his army crumbling under the might of the Britannians in previous decades, Peter swore he would never ever lose to them again. After gaining control of Wiltshire, the Britannian king decided to turn his attention to the north. Having expanded into Wales, the kingdom of the Danelaw was beginning to insert itself into the affairs of Britannia, eventually sparking armed conflict. Peter, wanting to make good on his earlier promise to crush the pagan kingdom, seized the opportunity to conquer the rest of the land surrounding the Thames River, citing the need to remove the pagans through holy warfare. In a similar manner to that which the mouth of the Thames was secured, Peter's army simply walked in and established their control over the region without any major battles. The armies of Britannia were successful in their northern campaign, however they lacked the remaining strength to challenge the English invaders in the south. Peter, in his few moments of mental clairvoyance, knew that he was not going to live forever. Having amassed plenty of duchy titles during his reign, he decided to slowly distribute his lands between the sons that he recognized as they came of age. First, he gave the petty kingdom of Kent, along with the holy site of Canterbury, to his second son Osred. Second, he gave his son and heir Alfred lordship over the petty kingdom of Huys. with the hopes that he would gain experience as a ruler along the border before assuming the throne. King Peter spent the next several years tending to his kingdom in between fits of crazed ramblings. In reality, as a result of his advanced age, his advisors had finally managed to wrest control over most affairs from his grasp. Much of the treasury was reinvested into the crown lands and the lands of the ducal princes, while the army was occupied defending the nation from Viking raiders. The last of King Peter's blunders was soon to come, however. This next decision was sure to have great ramifications on the history of the kingdom in the future. After defeating the Swedish army while they were attempting to raid the English countryside, Peter saw his opportunity. A holy war for East Anglia was declared, and the army was summoned. However, just after the messenger rode out to summon the Gaels to war, the king tragically died of heart failure. The stress and lunacy that had plagued him for his entire life had finally caught up to him. Peter left his son, bearing the name of Alfred the Great, the keys to a kingdom at war. Alfred knew that with many Asatru Vikings rallying to the side of Sweden, that there was no way the English state could win the war his father had declared. So borrowing money from His Holiness the Pope, he was able to buy a truce from them and give him time to consolidate his realm. Alfred was also more than willing to do the underhanded things required of the king in order to keep the realm stable. This included, upon assuming the throne, immediately starting a plot to murder the Queen of Britannica in order to attempt to weaken the realm further. Looking to expand his network of allies to rival that of his father, Alfred turned to the west. He arranged a betrothal between his daughter and the insular Christian king of Ireland. Happily enough, just as the arrangement was being finalized, Alfred received word that his spies had managed to rid the world of the Queen of Britannia. With his spies now well established in the kingdom, Alfred was free to move on to his next target. While the king himself was well shielded from any intrigue, his only son was not. It would only be a matter of time until Alfred's agents within the court would be able to work their magic. All it took was just one slip-up, however, and the scheme was discovered. The heir to Britannia would unfortunately walk free for now. Having had more than enough time to consolidate his realm and forge new alliances, Alfred was ready to continue the mission his father had died pursuing. He declared a war for his rightful claim on the petty kingdom of East Anglia, learning from the mistakes of his father and ensuring that no Asatru lords would join the Swedes' cause. With the aid of his Irish allies and a contract with the Knights Templar, Alfred managed to crush the Swedish army and secure lordship over East Anglia for the English. For the first time in many, many decades, de facto English power was beginning to expand past just the southern reaches of the island. In the time that it took Alfred to consolidate his rule over most of southern England, Britannia had secured the north, completely eradicating the kingdom of the Danelaw. The stage was being set for a confrontation that would likely determine the fate of the island's history. A pious man who took pride in being likened a defender of the faith, Alfred made the decision to personally sponsor a holy order, using funds from the royal treasury and a castle built by his father. The hope was that the newly formed Order of Knights would come to the defense of the realm in the brewing confrontation with the Britannias. Thus, the Knights Hospitalier was founded. It was around the time of the Holy Order's founding that the old king of Britannia suddenly died, leaving his young son Anil on the throne. Alfred knew that his time to strike would come soon. He would need to wait a bit longer, however, as the lords of Western Europe summoned the English knights to put an end to the Asatru Duchy of Brittany, which had long been a stain on Catholicism's grip on the continent. Offering lordship over the duchy to Alfred in exchange for his service, Britannia would need to wait for a few years yet. The English soldiers and Huscarls confronted the Breton retinues reinforced by the Jomsvikings in the duchy's capital. The fighting was tense, however the superior numbers and tactics of the English army was able to win them the advantage. While the English army was once again busy battling on the mainland, the Britannia forces pillaged and plundered the capital. Alfred knew that in a short time he would need to risk everything, his family, his nation, even his own unshakable faith, on an all-out invasion of the northern kingdom. A battle for lordship over the island was brewing. Should Alfred triumph, paganism could forever be stamped out, relegated to its proper status as a dead religion. Should King Anil triumph, however, the Brittany armies would have free reign over the south, and Alfred would have to concede the sovereignty of the English nation that his grandfather worked so hard to construct. As the young Brittany king came of age, Alfred called upon his Christian allies and the holy Catholic warriors to march north in an attempt to capture the Mercian heartlands of the pagan kingdom. Should he succeed, the crown of Britannia would be his by right of conquest. The time to achieve what his grandfather, Alfred the Great, could not was upon him. It all came down to this. The first battle was an attempt to relieve the siege of the Brittany capital. The main enemy forces led their allies into a slaughter, however, as they were brutally outnumbered. While fighting like crazed, vicious fanatics, they were yet unable to break the Catholic forces. As more and more reinforcements from each side poured in, it soon became clear that the first major victory of the campaign would belong to Alfred. The young pagan king decided to retreat from the capital and regather his forces for his boldest maneuver yet. While the English and Irish armies were busy in the north, King Anil landed his forces on the shores of Winchester in an attempt to capture the fortress before reinforcements could arrive. Thankfully, through years of investment and lessons learned from repeated attacks by pillagers, the walls of Winchester stood strong. Reinforcements quickly arrived from the north and beat back the invaders through sheer might of numbers. With both nations' capitals firmly in English hands, it was finally time to sign a treaty to end over a century of conflict. With the once mighty kingdom of Britannia now in ruins, Alfred was able to claim the title of king for himself and his descendants. There was no longer any one lord in all of England that could rival his power. Both the kingdoms of the Danelaw and Britannia had been destroyed. One might be led to wonder if it was simply God's will that the heathens be overthrown eventually by Alfred and his descendants. One by one, the former vassals of rival kings swore allegiance to Albert, including the former King Anil, who, as a condition for his surrender, had renounced his pagan ways and converted to the one true faith. All of England was finally in the hands of an Anglo-Saxon Christian king. Well, except for Wales, that is, but they're fine to just chill over there. I do want to take this opportunity to give a massive thank you to Tarkus Arkasar, the mastermind behind this alternate history scenario, for allowing me to jump into a multiplayer session with him. Please check out both his first video in this miniseries and his perspective of this video that was released on his channel at the same time as this one. Links to everything will be in the description, of course. If you're here before watching Tarkus' video, make sure to tell him hi for me in his comments. If you're here from Tarkus' channel, welcome. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you stick around for more in the future. But that's all for this saga, for now anyways. If you enjoyed this new style of video and want more, let me know. I hope you all have a great weekend. Stay safe, be kind, and I'll see you all next time.